Live. And it's recording. Hey, hello everyone. Can see people coming in now. Welcome to our webinar, another one of many that we run every month. Nice to see you all. We'll just give you like a minute or so to get more people in. But this one's particularly exciting because for some reason we had lots of extra registrants today, so quite a big audience. We're very, very excited about it, but thank you so much for attending. As you know, we're going to be focusing on marketing automation today, and I am running this webinar with one of my favorite clients, Incubeta, Lisa.
Oh, thanks.
But yeah, we'll start with some introductions properly afterwards. Cool, I think we can get started. Introductions, let's go. So welcome to the Mastering Marketing Automation webinar. It's going to be a bit of a hybrid between a case study and actual actions, actionable steps, tips, and everything like that. So feel free to get your notebook out if you want to write any notes down, take any screenshots, whatever you like. But also at the end, we will be sending you a copy of this if you just wanted to go back and look on it again. But let's get started. So we'll start with some introductions. My name is Clorinda. I am the HubSpot strategist, one of the HubSpot strategists at BBD Boom, a elite HubSpot partner, which some of you might already know. But my job at the company is basically to provide strategic advice to our clients to use HubSpot in the best way possible. And I do a bunch of different things from training to strategic calls to implementation, project management, a bit of everything. But I've been doing HubSpot, working with HubSpot since 2017, and I absolutely love the software. So that's myself. And then joining me on this webinar is Lisa Morton, and she is the Global Marketing Director of Incubeta. But Lisa, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Great, thank you so much. I, as Clorinda graciously said, am Global Marketing Director at Incubeta. I've been with the company for 9 years now. My role is to set out the marketing strategy for the business, uphold our quality, build our reputation, and I also see our marketing side in our CRM system, which is HubSpot. I believe we've had HubSpot for almost 3 years now, and working with BBD Boom for the past almost year now.
I think so. I actually don't really know the exact amount, but yeah, it's been a while. It feels like a while anyway. But thank you, Lisa.
Thanks.
Okay, we'll have a bit more of an introduction to Incubeta as a company or as a business, but we'll start off with some agendas just to give you an idea of what we'll be covering today. So we are first of all going to start off with just some of the challenges and goals that Incubeta faced at the beginning of the project, so this partnership between us and Incubeta. And then we're going to go into some specific use cases and talk about how Incubeta has used the marketing automation tools in HubSpot to solve those goals and pain points. Then we'll follow up by talking about the impact of all the work that we put in, and then provide a few additional tips on how you can apply the same setup as Incubeta has. So most of the time will be spent around the automation processes, because I'm sure that's probably the part that you're most excited about. So we will spend most of the time there. But before we dive into the specific agenda, I will say if you have any questions at any time, there is a Q&A box in the webinar. I don't know exactly where it is, but there's a Q&A section. Feel free to drop your questions there at any time. And we will have some time, a few minutes at the end, to answer as many of these questions as we can. Also, have a great time. We'll start off with a bit of an introduction about Incubeta. So just back to you, Lisa. Could you tell us a bit more about what Incubeta does?
Of course. And first, I'm going to apologize if I start having a coughing fit. Is that season, and it may happen. I do have water and I have taken a cough drop, so I have taken precautions. But ultimately, it is pronounced Incubeta. We are a digital advertising agency, and we have 20 years of experience in delivering data-driven marketing from strategy to execution. We work with some incredibly great brands and exciting brands like M&S, Samsung, L'Oreal, and Superdrug, amongst many more. And we do things from their creative implementation to media to technology to measurement and analytics, and bringing all of that together to create really strong strategies We have great partnerships with some of the big tech giants such as Google, Meta, TikTok, and Amazon. And really, as a B2B platform, CRM is just so important for us to be able to track and progress our leads through the system. So I will pass back to Clorinda to go through some of the challenges we had when we started working with BBD Boom.
Thanks, Lisa. So as you can imagine, it's a global company. The database is quite hefty. So there was a lot of things we could work through together. I also wanted to mention that Incubeta does have a marketing enterprise hub license. But everything that we will be covering in this webinar today is achievable with a pro license as well, in case you're wondering, especially with the workflows, because we'll be talking a lot about workflows. Okay, Incubeta challenges and goals. So when Incubeta came to us, I mostly spoke with Lisa and Helga as well, who is amazing. And we worked primarily with the sales and marketing teams. So one of the things that we talked about was the data. So data, you'll notice we'll talk about a lot in this webinar because it's so important to have good data to be able to do marketing properly. But yeah, basically the data that was sitting in Incubeta, especially with the contact and company records, were quite messy because there was a lot, as you can imagine, global teams, multiple languages, lots of different ways that records are being created and optimized and enriched as well. So there were lots of things happening. You know, sales reps were adding their own lead records. There was already an existing large database. They were coming from all sorts of different places, form submissions, imports. The life cycle stages weren't defined super well as well, which is something that we will talk about. So that is something that we needed to tackle in this project. Now, along with that, there wasn't really a streamlined sales handover process. So obviously, the goal of marketing is to be able to provide qualified leads for the sales team to continue that process and turn them into customers. So the process of that handover and the qualification processes before that was not super streamlined, and basically it was something else that we needed to tackle as well, using a combination of qualification metrics, looking into what needs to be qualified, how it's qualified, as well as workflows to enable that process to be happening in the background. So yes, based on these challenges, we had a few solutions that we put together. I'll actually let Lisa talk about these ones in more detail as well.
Excuse me. As Clorinda mentioned, it was a bit of a mess to sum up our challenges. Incredible platform not being utilized, and we had done a lot of work to get it into a much better place. But if we're focusing on the marketing automation side, which makes our life so much easier, I've kind of bucketed this into 3 areas that I'll go into a bit more detail for you. The first one is data improvement. The second one is lead nurturing and scoring. And then finally, do not laugh, these are so incredibly important, notifications. And I will go into why I love these further down the line.
I love them as well.
They're brilliant. If we dive into data, I don't think I need to bang the data drum. We all know data is so important to our marketing for everything we do, especially as the consumer is starting to demand more and more relevant and personal content. So from our side, we know data can be difficult to keep updated, especially if you're asking sales team to do it, or the sales team passes on to client teams. How do they keep it updated? Having multiple records, maybe they log in with a personal and then they have their work email. All of this stuff is so important for us to keep clean and to use automation as much as possible to make it as easy as possible. One of the first things I'm going to recommend is utilizing progressive form fields. If you do not know what progressive form fields are, these allow you to really increase your data very easily. If you have a form on your website, you want to keep them generally quite short. The shorter they are, the better feedback you get. So for instance, from our perspective, we might ask company and job title. Now, if somebody's filled out that form before, yes, you can auto refill it, but why have those 2 questions there? Progressive form fields allows you to remove those and to put things. So for instance, from our side, I may put company size and I may put revenue, or I may put service of interest, and it just replaces those. So you continually building on and continually having those touch points to be able to increase and improve your marketing efforts for those people.
Yeah, and once you have the data in there, you can use it for so many things in HubSpot: segmentation, further qualification. You can use the sales reps can look at that information to run conversations that are specific to them as well. So very, very useful tool. If anyone is wanting to experiment with that, if you just go into your form builder settings, you can see, if you scroll down on the builder, as you can see in that screenshot, it's just a little toggle thing that you can open up and then add whatever additional questions you want to ask in there.
This is why we hired them. In terms of the next thing we were doing, that's contact lifecycle automation. Contact lifecycle is really important to us. I mean, we don't want to be sending the same message to a prospect as we are sending to a customer. We don't want to be sending the same client survey or customer information to an ex-client. Having that up to date and relevant is so important for us. So there's some easy automation tools we can do. So for instance, you can do deal closed one, customer. We can also do things like if a deal is lost and there's no other deals in the system, sometimes we have more than one deal, then we put them as lost customer. There's so many other things we can do with this, but for the most part, we try to keep it as easy and efficient as possible so the sales team don't have to think about it too much.
Thank you. One of the things we recommend with lifecycle stages is to actually map out your customer journey on a mapping flow chart. So we use a tool called Whimsical, but Miro is quite a common one as well, which you might have heard of. And just really understand or be able to define exactly what each of your lifecycle stages means so that you know what you need to automate in HubSpot. Another thing to keep in mind is if you go into, you can see a screenshot in there, it's in the settings, the contact object settings, you'll see this lifecycle stage tab, which HubSpot actually has some preset automations that you can literally just turn on and keep on to automate some of these lifecycle stage updates. But of course, you can use the workflows tool to really make that really specific. Another thing I'll recommend is if you just go to Google and Google lifecycle stage HubSpot, there's a knowledge base article that HubSpot has written that explains their default definitions of their standard out-of-the-box lifecycle stages in HubSpot. But just keep in mind, you can also put in your own additional lifecycle stages, remove anything that's already there, rearrange them however you like. Lifecycle stages are so important. So definitely, if you haven't really visited that property yet, go have a look. Sorry, and let us know if you've got any questions about them. Okay, the next one.
Excuse me, now I'm coughing. The last two seem quite simple, but are actually so important for us. So for instance, contacts preferred language. When you're a global business and you have languages in Danish and German and Italian, Spanish, all of the above, you know that it is so important to hit people in their primary language. Even if they speak English, it just makes people feel more comfortable, more seen, more respected if you are sending them content in their own language. So what we do is if anybody visits our, say, Spanish website or fills out a Spanish form or visits a Spanish landing page, we automatically have an automation that sets them to preferred language as Spanish. This allows us to make sure that the content they get, the emails they get, any of the nurturing they get is done in the right language to help progress them in the correct way. And finally, enriching company and contact data. So HubSpot has a database. We have it set up where all of the information is from that is feeding into our company data. So that's stuff like industry, revenue, company size, all of that pulls in from the HubSpot database. What we weren't doing until we started working with BB Doom is pushing that back into the customer. So making sure that everybody who was connected to that company also had those fields. So had the industry, had the company sizes. It allowed us to do much more effective targeting for those customers. I'm sure you have stuff you want to add, Clarinda.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much what you said, but in terms of the workflows, basically with HubSpot, the workflows tool can help you to do all of that automatically. So you don't actually have to be manually copying the information across. So for example, you can build a workflow that says if contact has an associated company, copy industry of company to contact industry property. You can also just do cross-object triggers as well. So if contact has associated company with industry of this value, action this and this and this and this. So yeah, in terms of, you know, being able to use cross-object information is really, really powerful in HubSpot. So highly recommended to set it up. And it's, as you might find, the workflows tool in HubSpot is very user-friendly. So I'm sure you'll be able to figure it out. But if not, you've got lots of resources, as you know. But yes, another thing I wanted to mention, and some of you might already be aware, but HubSpot has recently acquired Clearbit, a data enrichment company. So in the future, we might see a lot of your records being enriched in real time by the Clearbit technology. We don't really know the timeline of when that is happening yet, but this was announced a few weeks ago and it's very, very exciting. So I'm very happy to see that, yeah, HubSpot is just going to get more and more powerful as we go along. Okay, let's move on to lead nurturing. Back to you, Lisa.
Lead scoring and lead nurturing. This is probably one of the biggest projects we undertook together.
Oh, yes.
And I'm sure Clarinda could have killed me at times just in terms of getting me to make up my mind. Lead scoring is a huge project. There's actually some really good HubSpot Academy and articles on setting up your lead scoring. And some really good frameworks to use. We used one that was quite similar to that, as well as advice from BBD Boom and what is effective and what works. Our lead scoring basically allows us to know how engaged leads are in our system, and it allows us to make sure that nobody comes into the system and then just sits in the system. We want to make sure that we are moving people and engaging them and sending them relevant content and constantly testing. So from a lead scoring point of view, our lead scoring looks at three kind of areas. One is their engagement with marketing collateral and content. The next is how good is the data. So for instance, if it is a personal Gmail, there's negative points for that. Because company email is preferred. And then is the company a good fit? So are they the right size? Are they the right industry? All of those factors are looked together to give us a score. Now, your score will change dependent on what your industry is, dependent on how many clicks, how many people are involved.
There's no one size fits all.
Exactly. And we are still testing and working with these and adjusting them as we go. But to start with, if somebody's between 0 and 9, we look at putting them in need of nurture. Those are people who might have come in once, haven't done anything in ages, maybe got filled out a newsletter, but just haven't done anything since. They go into an in need of nurture list, and then they trigger a nurture workflow, which I'll go into more detail in a little bit. The second group and second bucket is engaged leads. These are people who read some of our newsletters, might have filled out a form, might have a good company fit. That's between 10 to 34, and that's the second nurture. And those nurtures are quite different in terms of what we're targeting them with, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And then when we get them to that last bucket, that MQL, that's when we trigger a workflow to hand them over to the sales, to hand them over to the right sales team to make sure they're being qualified and reached out to. And we start that process. Now, I am well aware that people always don't get their first message. They may be lost. We'll get into notifications later on. But if for some reason nothing changes in the lead, I then have a reminder 15 days later. And if after that reminder, they still haven't done anything, I personally get a reminder and I get to chase people and find out why nothing's happened. This comes back to why that life cycle stage is so important.
Yeah.
If they're relevant, I need to know they're relevant. We pay for every marketing contact in our system. Not every, but they're bulked.
Yeah, in tiers. Yeah.
Yeah. So we need to make sure that the ones that we are reaching out to are the ones that are important and relevant and aren't spam. So for us, having a clean list, so important. Having sales be able to qualify, be able to get these leads, be able to see who's in our system, so important. There is also a email notification that goes out to everybody, and that's what it looks like. In terms of our nurturing, I mean, Clarinda, do you want to talk on anything before I go into our nurturing?
Yes, I just wanted to say, in terms of if anyone is hoping to implement something similar, of course, in HubSpot, there's so many components to make this work successfully. So of course, like Lisa's mentioned, the life cycle stage definitions are very important. With this specific one, we're looking at the specific MQL lifecycle stage, which is a marketing qualified lead. We're also looking at building workflows and active lists in HubSpot to bucket these contacts based on their score into specific groups for the relevant nurturing stream. So have a look at contact lists, company lists potentially, and lifecycle stages. And then, of course, workflows to make all of these work, push them into the right list or send out the right notifications. In terms of the scoring setup, if you are wanting to set up scoring in HubSpot, there is basically a default standard HubSpot property on your contact records called HubSpot score. And this is the place where you would basically be giving the positive and negative scores to mark that qualification level or the lead score specifically. So if you are interested in that, go to your property settings, contacts, search for HubSpot score, and you can see what that setup looks like. On the company level, you can do a custom property as well. And the field type needs to be a score field type. And you can also do scoring on your company records to do like ICP tiering and so on. So yeah, if you are wanting to implement any of that, just keep in mind these are the different components you need to have set up.
I will just give one word of advice on this. Don't make it super overcomplicated.
Oh yeah, start simple.
If you super overcomplicate it, it just becomes a bit of a mess, and then fixing it's a mess. But yeah, that learn from experience.
Yes. Sorry, there is a quick question. So will the scores be done manually? So yes, the scores have to be done manually. So when you go into that property for the very first time, it's just blank. There is a column for positive and a column for negative. What we recommend is to put your scoring criteria in a spreadsheet first, like a Google sheet or something like that, and then transfer that criteria into HubSpot. At Boom, when we work with clients, we have a template that we share as a very standard scoring process that you can set up. But obviously, when we work with Lisa, we optimize that a lot. But if you go onto like HubSpot forums and things like that, they do have there are people and professionals out there giving you suggestions on the best way to score for your specific business use case, but they have to be done manually, yes. Okay, let's move on to lead nurturing. Back to you, Lisa.
Cool. Lead nurturing. Now, as I mentioned, we have multiple nurturing buckets. So the first one, when we are talking to people in need of nurture, we lead with very thought leadership based content. We know they aren't in a position to want to convert. They haven't fully engaged with us. There's probably one touch point in which they've been with us. Maybe there hasn't been a touch point in ages as well, and we're just trying to get them warmed up. So it's thought leadership based pieces. And generally what I recommend, and I think anybody would recommend, is making sure those pieces are stand the test of time. Like, you don't want to have to be going into your nurturing system and updating them every month because you talked about a content piece that just isn't relevant anymore. Yeah. The other thing we do is very simply, at the moment, we have started to segment them by industry and the industries that are relevant to us, so we can target that content. So for instance, let's talk about travel. We know that potentially challenges for travel will be different from challenges for retail. So we can put very specific content that reaches that person a little bit easier. Now, there's so much more you can go into this. For instance, we have the dream of being like, okay, depending on what page they were on our site, if we know what solution they were, we can target them with this content. We are building this up and we are starting small, but with that data, as we talked about, as you enrich it, there's so much more you can do. And there's also dynamic email adjustments that can be made based on some other stuff. So you can have a standard email format for retail, and then you might say, oh, if they've been on our creative page, give them this creative content. So I do recommend, sorry, I'm getting very excited.
No,
I recommend layering stuff as much as possible.
Yeah. If anyone's interested in that thing that Lisa just mentioned, it's called smart content in HubSpot.
Definitely.
Yeah, feel free to search it up. It should be quite easily findable in Google.
I'm a big fan. And what we do is we have about 6 emails, and they're split, I think, over like a 6-month period, and we break them up by time just to continually try to engage them over that period. And we try to make the content as relevant as possible. Now, when we get into the next bucket, it's a very similar structure, but what's different is the content type. We look at far more solution specific stuff, stuff that will solve challenges, stuff that might get them to reach out to a salesperson and put sales messaging, especially as you get towards the end of that rotation of content. And the main goal there is to get them to interact enough to become an MQL to put them in the sales qualified. Now, if they go to the sales qualification and they are a great brand, but they aren't necessarily ready to convert, maybe they just signed on with another agency, we then start another nurture process. And that's just to make sure they know who we are. We keep them updated. We give them good content relevant to our site and the solutions we're delivering, maybe really exciting case studies we've got going on. And what we'll do is do an automatic reminder notification if that, for the sales team, if that person goes on a specific solution page or interacts with our website in a specific way. And that leads us on beautifully to notifications. Is there anything you want to add, Clarinda?
No, I've got nothing else to add.
One last thing that I have to say is we are doing A/B testing. Always do A/B testing. We have 2 emails for each email, 2 different versions to look at how they work. Then we'll check out different content. Always test. That's just good.
Yeah, always optimize, always make sure that everything can be improved.
100%. Now, notifications, the thing you laughed at me for, or I'm assuming you laughed at me for, because it seems like such a really simple thing, but when done in the right way, especially from a B2B perspective, getting the right salespeople to know what's going on, getting the right people aware of what's happening. Like we said, we don't want those leads just sitting there doing nothing. And if they do something that's exciting, if they do something that kind of triggers that, oh, that's interesting. They've been on our data section. They haven't been on data before. Let's inform sales. That stuff's so relevant for us.
Yeah.
And it means, and I'm jumping to the contact or engages section on my notes.
They all work together.
Yeah, that allows our sales team to contact them at a time that is right for them, at a time where this information is relevant, at a time when they are thinking about it. So that is huge. Same with the life cycle changes to MQL that we talked about, that whole cycle, but them knowing how much that person's engaged with us, knowing that they're really interested in what we're doing and what we're serving, that's so helpful for them to be aware of and gives them those opportunities without them having to go out and do cold prospecting over and over and over again. Now, as a global business, the contact us form, this is a huge workflow and it's actually quite complicated. We have 20 offices all over the world. We need to make sure the right leads go to the right people. We need to make sure from an efficiency point of view, multiple people aren't talking to the lead and that this one person talks to them and they're talking to them about the right thing. I just looked at the time. I realized I need to speed up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we did have this for 30 minutes, but we might go over, so feel free to say, but obviously this is recorded as well, just for everyone who's still here. But yeah, just FYI. A quick question from Kinga. How large is your sales team in Incubeta?
It depends on the office. So each local team has their own sales team. They range from 1 person for some of the smaller offices up to 8 to 10. I think on average, people have about 3 salespeople per market. Okay,
there you go. Yeah, in terms of the notifications, I know the second part of the question was, does it get overwhelming? There's different levels of notifications you can give your team in HubSpot. You've got your app notifications, email notifications, and Lisa mentioned in that slide you can do Slack notifications as well.
So important, Slack notifications.
Yes. But you can control, like, all the sales reps can control how much notifications they get themselves too. So there is a level of control as to how much they get or should get. But of course, if you are giving them notifications, make sure that you've told them in advance so they don't get confused. Very important.
Communication, so important in this. Yeah, we connect with Slack. It is huge for us. The easier part about Slack as well is you can send it to a group and people can be added and removed So for instance, if somebody leaves the sales team, you just have, say, a UK sales team, and people can be added and taken out. Whereas if you put individual people in to receive the email, then you have to remove them and add the new people, and that becomes a little bit more.
That's actually a very big pain point for a lot of clients. So that's actually a really, really good note.
Yes, I like groups that I don't have to update. Making my life easy is what this is all about. I will also say I've got one more point on here, and this is purely from me, from a selfish marketing point of view. Deal one. If a deal is closed one, I get a notification. And this is specifically because people don't always tell me when we win exciting clients. If I get a notification every time we win a client, I can see if there's any PR opportunities. Just a recommendation if that is relevant to you, but
it's a good one.
It's very useful for me. Cool. That is everything. Those are my 3 points.
Yes.
Do you have anything you want to add to notifications, Clarinda?
I don't at the moment. I just wanted to mention that there's different types of notifications, which I've mentioned. So I'm quite happy to move on to tips and kind of practical advice. I know there are a few questions that have popped up, so we'll try to answer most of these at the end, if you're able to stay. But yeah, we'll get this all recorded and sent across as well. All right, first question for you, Lisa. How has the new implementation of the marketing tools helped Incubeta so far?
Oh, I mean, efficiency is my number one, and I am a big fan of efficiency. Like I said, there's no leads just sitting in the system, which is so important. We are moving people through that stage. We are getting more people seen by the sales team. They are getting qualified, and the ones that just aren't relevant, we're moving out of our system. It's basically taking a very stagnant CRM system and moving into something that functions and works like a machine.
Perfect. Thank you. And what would you recommend a team with similar challenges to focus on first, and what should they do to start that process?
If you have similar challenges, I feel for you. I 100% feel for you. And it's hard to say first thing. I'm going to give you some.
It's a big question.
Yeah. Getting people onboarded, making sure they know what they're doing, making it part of your culture, making sure they're using it, making sure they're getting the data.
Lots of training.
Lots of training. Like you should eat, live, breathe HubSpot. It is a relevant part of your day-to-day job. It is opened 24/7 for me. I might only look at it while I'm working, but it is open constantly on my tabs. It should be open constantly. It should be how they work and how they integrate and everything like that. And getting all their data up to speed and knowing the processes for that. Now, if for some reason you are amazing and you have everybody onboarded and your data is in place, first of all, I applaud you. Way to go. You are rocking it. If you are there, the next step is moving your leads along, nurturing them, making sure they're getting those touch points, making sure you're getting those emails out, checking everything, trialing different things, and seeing how they work.
Thank you. Okay, last question for you. What is one thing you would do to ensure the quality of your data is maintained moving forward?
2 things. I can't just do one thing.
That's 2 things.
Make sure your leadership is on board. Make sure your leadership supports everything you are doing and backs you and realizes how important this is to your business. If you do not have senior leadership behind you and supporting you, it makes your challenge so much harder because you're constantly fighting. The second thing is hire somebody. I don't care if it's a consultant. I don't care if it's part-time, twice a week, depending on the size of your business. Our business is the size where we have somebody full-time. They are there to train, onboard, make sure the data is updated, make sure people know how to keep the data updated. If there's duplicates, they're deduplicate hitting the system. Hire somebody for CRM management and make sure you have time monthly to look at this stuff. And that is what I will say on that.
Thank you. That's great advice. Okay, right. Well, I know we are kind of over time, but I'm just going to go ahead and spend the rest of the time answering the questions remaining. But for everyone who needs to drop off, thank you so much for attending this webinar. Hopefully we'll see you in the next one. Okay, first question. For contact data from B2B businesses, how do you value company emails versus personal? So I'm happy to answer this one. Basically, there's a couple of things you can do. So if you are B2B, if you don't care about personal emails, you can actually block these out in your form submission at that point of form submission. There is a setting in HubSpot for the email field in your forms where you can say if it's a personal email address, don't let me submit don't create this contact. So that's the first thing. Now, if you have contact records in HubSpot that have a combination of both, you can basically, in your scoring system, as an example, or in a workflow, filter it by the email content. So you can say, if email contains @gmail.com, give -10 points. Obviously, it'll be a bit tedious to go through the entire list, but if that is what you need to do, that is what you need to do. So yeah, that's the qualification side. So hopefully that answers that question.
Can I add something to that?
Yes.
From our side, we accept both personal and company emails. Specifically, company emails for a contact us form, that is required. But if you're signing up for a newsletter, like I often sign up for people's newsletters with my personal email, I don't recommend discounting them. Often what we will do is do a spot check where we will take 10 or 15 emails, go into LinkedIn and see if who they are coming up with, who they are, and see if they're relevant. And that gives us a good idea if those personal emails are working for us and bringing in the right people.
Thanks. Yeah, that's a good point as well. Okay. Right. So a question for Lisa from an anonymous attendee. How did you get the sales team on board and what is their demographic? We have an old school salespeople and I'm struggling to get them on board.
Yes, we have a mix demographic. Some of them are very young, some of them are very old, some of them use spreadsheets, which drives me nuts. Some of them, I had a conversation the other day and somebody said, oh, well, if HubSpot's the way we're going to go, we'll get on board with that. And I can't say we have it perfectly, but we have hired somebody, as I mentioned. We did a huge onboarding. Leadership is setting up specific KPIs for the local sales team. The pipeline needs to be there. They're going to do weekly pipeline checks. Hasn't happened yet. Something we're looking at getting in place to make sure that they're where they need to be. And also from my perspective, I'm very much so, okay, we host an event, we put it in a campaign. If the attribution's not coming through, we're not doing that event again. And if the sales team comes to me and goes, no, I had so many leads, I need to be there, it's not in HubSpot. I use HubSpot as my justification for a lot of the marketing activity I do. And if they're not putting it in, then it's not being invested in.
Thank you. Okay, we've got quite a few questions. So I'll actually just look through and see which ones we can answer now. And then if you've got any questions, I've just additional questions anyway. I will put this slide up here. So our contact details, if you want to ask any questions, send us an email. We'll help you there. But right now, one final question I'll actually mention. So from King again, how do you unqualify and delete contacts from CRM? So that's quite a big one as well. Lisa, do you have any thoughts on that?
What we have done is we have a disqualified lifecycle stage. So that means we have gone through and we said, this person is not relevant to us. Maybe it's spam. Be very careful. We have been getting a lot of spam contacts that are actually then sending us RFPs and dropping, be very careful. You should have security training on everything. That's a very wide side note. But if any of these come through, we disqualify them. I don't delete them from the system. I unmark them as marketing qualified leads. But what I don't want happening is these people coming back and back and back and back into the system, which can happen. So if I keep them in the system as disqualified, put them in a list, then I can do my strategy around that and exclude them from things.
You can also mark them as a non-marketing contact.
That one.
Okay. Yes, there are quite a few questions, so apologies we weren't able to get to all of them, but like I said, our contact details are in there. If you have any questions, feel free to just shoot us an email, give us a call. We'll be more than happy to answer those questions over there. If you do need any help from us, reach out as well. But Lisa, thank you so much for staying the extra 10 minutes on this webinar. We really appreciate your time, and I'm sure it has been super valuable for everyone who's been attending.
No problem. Please do find me on LinkedIn if you do have any questions for me. I'm more than happy to answer them. It's just Lisa Morton at Incubeta. I'm pretty sure I'm the only one.
Yes.
But yeah, happy to answer anything that's come through.
Okay. Thank you, Lisa. And thank you everyone for attending. Just keep an eye out for an email with the copy of a recording, and yeah, we can go from there. Have a great day.
Thanks,
Have a
everyone.
great time. Bye.
Bye.